Hi everyone, welcome to Personal Die Cutting. Today we're going to be setting up our new Cricut Maker. I just got mine in lilac and we'll get set up and start out on our first project together using the materials that are included in your Getting Started bundle and the tools that came with your machine. So let's jump into it. The first thing you're going to need to do is obviously open your machine up, plug it in, and we're going to open up our Get Started bundle. Open Sesame. All right. So we have our nice little materials for our first project and the Open Me First. First thing it says, unleash this beauty. Plug in and power on your fabulous new Cricut machine. So you've got your power cord at the back. Just gonna plug it in. It's quite obvious, it's just a circular hole. And then plug it into your wall. I'm just gonna move this out of the way. Lift it open here, and the tray drops down beautifully. Now I've already taken my packaging out, but when you get your machine, you'll see a piece of foam in here. You're gonna wanna remove that. Powering on your machine, you've got your nice little power button here, and we're just going to turn her on. The next step, 2, is get connected, and we're going to go to cricut.com/setup, and they'll walk us through every step. I'm going to open Google Chrome, go to cricut.com/setup, and from here I can choose to download Design Space for Windows. Design Space is now a downloadable program. You do need the internet to access it, but it does go on your desktop now. It's not totally cloud-based. So I've already downloaded it, so I'm just gonna hit open. But for you, download it, follow the instructions. It's super straightforward. Now it says, welcome to Cricut Setup. Select the product you wanna set up, register, or update. We've got a Cricut Maker here. So we want to make sure the machine is placed 10 inches from the wall. I've got loads of space behind me here, so I'm good. And that's so that your cutting mat can be fed through properly. You can connect your USB, then connect the power and turn on. Back in our Get Started bundle, you'll find your handy USB cable. And you just plug it into the back of the machine. And plug it into your computer. So we hit continue. It's going to check if your machine needs any updates. My machine says it needs an update, so we're going to go update. Success, your machine is up to date. Continue. And I've actually already registered my maker, so you'll just follow the prompts on screen and it'll walk you through everything. It's super simple and straightforward. From here we can start our first test cut. But before we get into that, I want to show you what's in the box. We're going to do a first project that's going to use a bunch of the tools that came with your maker. If you want to set up your maker using Bluetooth, which I personally do because otherwise I've got an awkward cable going on, and my laptop only has one USB port, so I can't use my mouse, which I much prefer. So we're going to go to the Bluetooth on your computer. We're going to add Bluetooth and other devices. And we're just going to let it detect. See, it's picked up my maker already. Connecting, pin, you're just going to type in 0000. Connect. Your device is ready to go. Done. So I'm now going to disconnect my USB cable, plug my mouse back in, disconnect it from the other side, and I'm just going to wrap up my cord nicely so it's out of the way, doesn't get tangled, and hopefully I can find it again at another point if I need it. For most Most of the time using the Bluetooth connection is perfectly fine, but if you're doing any kind of longer project, cutting thicker pieces of material, then you're going to want to use your USB cable because you don't have to worry about losing the connection. Okay, so let's just have a look in here. So we said we had materials for our first project, so we'll go ahead and open that up. They've just given you a couple of pieces. Some white cardstock with a little bit of texture, some blue cardstock with a little texture, and a piece of fabric. The Cricut Maker is quite unique in that it can cut fabric using the rotary tool, which is in here. This is probably the main reason I selected the Maker over the Explore Air, because I'm super excited about cutting out fabric on my machine. I love to sew. I don't maybe get to do as much of it as I used to, but this should hopefully cut down on time, especially on like little projects. All right, there's your Maker welcome book. It's more like a brochure. Read it if you like. And then in the very bottom of this, there's a cover and some warranty information. So we went through 1, 2, 3 is make a little something. That's what we're going to get into next. For Cricut.com/create. You want to bookmark that page. It's super handy. The other thing that comes with your Maker is a black fine point pen, which we are going to experiment with today too. You also want to store your pens down so that the ink doesn't dry out from the tip. What else came with your Maker? You will have received 2 mats. One is the light grip mat, which will work for most projects. Is perfect for vinyl, iron-on, lightweight cardstock. And then the pink one is the fabric grip mat. This should only be used for fabric. Same with your rotary cutter, only use it for fabric. If you're into sewing, you know you have fabric scissors. That's all you want to use this for, fabric, fabric, fabric. Okay, I'm just gonna put my rotary cutter away. Be very careful, it's very sharp, so we take it out of the plastic packaging. And what came with it is a protective cap for your rotary cutter. And we're just going to pop it on. Just pop it on, I think. There. And we've got handy storage under here, so I'm going to put my rotary blade there so it's out of the way. All right, so we're going to get started on our first project. So we're all connected now. I'm going to go into Cricut Design Space and I'm going to start a new project. So once in here, you can see it's what they call your canvas. You can upload images, you can insert shapes, you can add text, images. This is stuff you can find in Cricut Access. Some of it's free, some of it you need the Cricut Access subscription. So you can sign up for Cricut Access. So far I've found there's a lot of really cool stuff in it, so it's totally worth it. It's about 10 bucks a month. So if you're doing a lot of projects and you don't want to be hunting around the internet for free SVG files everywhere you go, it's a great resource to use. So we're going to look for a frame. So I'm going to look for a rectangular frame and free. And I'm just going to scroll down until I see one that I want. These should all be free for us to use, whether you have Cricut Access or not. And I want this guy. So I want to hit Insert Image. It's going to add it here. I'm going to start by rotating it 90 degrees because I want it horizontal, just to show you. And I want to make it a reasonable size. Let's make it a good 6 inches. So my width, I'm going to type in 6, and it automatically is adjusting the height of it. I can take that off if I wanted to make it skinnier. I like the proportions of it, so I'm going to leave it as is. And I'm just going to change this to white so I know what color I'm cutting my stuff out of. So next I want to add text. We're going to say hello beautiful, or whatever you want it to say. We're going to actually use one of our Cricut pens and test that out. So we need to pick a font that is a writing font, otherwise you'll kind of get a weird outline. So writing fonts are just easier to use. So I'm going to add in that filter, and I want Wanderlust. Here we go, because it's actually a free one as well. Come on. There we go. So we have hello beautiful. And we'll come back in here, and I want to do a little adjustment on this font because I don't like the spacing here, but it's fairly simple to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to ungroup it, and then I'm going to actually group together these letters here so they all stay. Oops. Sorry, that only did the T and the L, it looks like. So I've got T, I, F, U, group. All right, so now those guys are all together. I'm just gonna nudge it over a little bit. I'm using my arrow key so I don't lose the line across the bottom. And I'm gonna group them all together again. Move this out of the way, and I can group it like, well, I'm going to group beautiful. I'm going to group beautiful together and hello. Actually, let's do it all together because I like the spacing between the two. So I'm going to select my frame, and I'm going to select my hello beautiful. I'm going to go to align, and I want to, well, if I hit center, it's going to center it like that, which actually looks pretty good. The other thing I want to do is I'm going to add an image, another image. So I want a flower. And I'm going to pick this one here because it's got 2 layers, so then I can cut out part of it on my fabric and part of it on my cardstock. I'm going to leave it all grouped together, and I'm going to just resize it till it sort of fits in there nicely, just so I can visually see, okay, where is this going to end up? Perfect. All right, so I'm happy with how that looks. The next thing we're going to do is get our machine set up to cut. Okay, so now that we have our project ready to go, we're going to select Make It on your screen. So you can see it's done something weird here with my writing. So my writing's on a mat, my white cut is on a mat, my flowers are also on mats. So I need to change this a little bit. So I'm gonna hit cancel, and I'm going to select both my white background and my text. I'm gonna hit attach. So now those 2 pieces are tied together, so the machine knows that we're going to write and draw on this white piece. So now we're going to hit Make It again. And now you can see Hello Beautiful is coming up properly, and we've got our other cuts that are going to be done. So we're going to go continue. Going to connect to my maker because it's turned on. So here I'm going to select my material. I've got cardstock, so let's just start with typing in cardstock. And I'd say it's a light, well, probably medium cardstock because it is a Cricut material. Done. And it wants me to load my pen. So it wants to load Midnight Pen into clamp A. If I press info, I'm going to open up my clamp A. It says hold the clamp up while pushing down with your pen until the arrow on the pen disappears. So you'll hear that nice click and close up the clamp. My pen's now inserted. And my fine point blade is already installed. I don't need to do anything with that. Now to set up my mat. So I'm going to use my light grip mat. You also should prep your mat before you get started, which is just basically sticking it against your shirt or a t-shirt on it, or you can touch it with your hands. It's just to remove a little bit of the extra tackiness. Since we are using a heavier weight material right now, it's not that big a deal. So you remove the protective cover from your mat, grab your material, space how it was laying it out. So it had it going horizontally. So I'm going to place my material across the top. I'm just lining up the top edge. Just stick it down with my hands. Just like that. So now it's ready to cut and write. So I'm going to load the mat. If you look on here, under the info, you want to place the material in the top left corner inside the mat grid, which I did, and position the mat underneath the mat guidelines. So those are these two here and here. Now you want to, when you're loading it, make sure you're holding it in there and pushing it up against your two black rollers here. If not, you can end up with your mat misloaded, which has happened to me before. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see there's cut lines up here, which is not good. So my mat wasn't loaded properly when I went to make a cut. Push it up in there. I'm going to tell it to load. And the next thing is to push the Cricut Go button. So it's just going to check on the mat itself. It's going to start drawing first. Let's get in here and you can get a good look. Sort of interesting how it does it. It doesn't really do it how you would write it. It does smaller bits first and then comes back. So on the computer, it's just about finished with the drawing. Now it's going to detect the fine point blade. And it's going to start our cutting. So it starts with the small circles, and then it's going to come back and do the whole outline. So you can see where it's cut the little circles. Okay, so now it's telling me to unload my mat. I'm gonna have a nice look at it beforehand. It's cardstock, so there shouldn't be any issues, but when you're doing vinyl, you want to double check that your material's cut through properly. So I'm going to unload my mat. There we go. Hello, beautiful. I'm happy with how that looks. The next step is to remove my material from the mat. If you purchased a spatula and a scraper, these are two extremely handy tools. They don't come standard with your Cricut, and also tweezers. They don't come standard with your Cricut, but they're definitely worth investing in. So Cricut has their own line. There's lots of non-Cricut brand ones. So the easiest way to remove your material from your mat is to actually lay your mat down and start peeling your mat away from your material. This helps prevent curling. And that came out perfectly. So there's my cutout. And then left on the mat are my little dots, which I'm just gonna take my scraper and scrape away. Ideally into the garbage so you don't end up with bits all over your floor. Okay. So we are going to do the blue paper next, because when we start doing our fabric, we have to change up our blade and everything. So we're gonna go with this one next. So I'm placing my material in the topmost left corner. Put these back out of my way. I'm going to take my pen out because I don't want to leave it in there and have the tip dry out. So it's now adhered to my upper right corner and it's going to be ready to go. So I actually want to cut this one next because that's the one I want out of the top layer and I want this guy to be out of the fabric. So we're going to select him. He still has my base medium cardstock, which is good. And I'm going to go through the same process for loading my material. Make sure your mat is under the guides, pushed up against the rollers, and load it in. And once it's good, you'll see the Cricut sign, the Cricut image flashing here. And we're just going to press OK. We're going to unload it. So that was nice and quick. We've unloaded it. And pull it out and do the same thing again. Push my mat face down and just peel it back away from my material. And that prevents this material and my image from curling. So now I've got my nice little flower. So we're done with our light grip mat. I'm going to grab my protective sheet, place it back on top. Oops. I'm gonna get make sure you get any leftover bits from your project off your mat, or else you'll have a heck of a time removing them later. My cover doesn't have to be perfectly lined up, it just needs to be covering it sticky. We're gonna put it back out of the way. So next up is our fabric piece. So now we're gonna need to change out our blade to our rotary cutter. And also we're going to be using our fabric grip mat. So this is a new experience for me too, and I'm quite excited about it. So in Design Space, I'm going to select our piece and we are going to go to Browse All Materials and we're going to type in fabric. And this is just basic cotton. Done. So we have no tool required in clamp A, and we're going to load the rotary blade in clamp B. So I'm going to start by taking my rotary blade out of storage. Take that off, the cover off, and we're going to open clamp B. Come on. Take this guy out. That's our fine point blade. I'm going to just put him in the drawer for now so he's out of the way and I don't lose him. Same thing with the cap for the rotary blade. Now we're just going to insert the rotary blade, making sure the gears all fit together. Close the clamp and close clamp B. Now remember how I said about priming your mat? That is something you do not want to do with your fabric grip mat. You also want to be very careful you don't touch the sticky on this one because it's a very special stickiness that's on it that lets your fabric release properly. And you don't want to get your oils from your hands and other bits on it that are unnecessary. Any lint and threads left behind by your fabric, not a big deal. Don't worry about them. If they do drive you nuts, you can carefully remove them with tweezers, but do your best to not touch the sticky on your mat. And peel off my protective cover. Set it off to the side. And we're going to place our fabric in the top corner again. If you have a brayer, it's a great time to use it just to smooth out your fabric, but you can gently do it with your hands. You also don't want to overstick it. So there you go, it's nicely adhered and we're going to be ready to cut. So again, we're going to push our mat up against the rollers. We are going to load it. And we're going to press the go button and hope for the best. It's preparing and detecting the tool. Unload the mat now. You can see it's cut through. I'm just going to use my tweezers and remove my flower. Ooh, it's exciting. Same thing with the extra fabric on the mat. Remove it. Oops. And you can see there's a little bit of bits left on there. Not a big deal. The rotary cutter can cut through that just fine in the future. I'm going to select finish. And I'm back into my project space. Now that my fabric's all cut out, I want to put my cover back on my fabric grip mat so it stays nice and protected. Put it back out of the way. And I'm going to unload my rotary cutter. Just a little bit of lint on it. Put the cover back on it. You want the little screw on it to be in the little opening. Put that back in there and just reload the knife. Reload the fine point blade. So we've successfully cut out our 3 pieces. We've got our cardstock that we wrote on, our little blue flower, and our fabric flower. So now we're ready to put it all together. So we're done with our Cricut Maker right now. I'm just going to close it up so I have a little bit more working space. I'm going to power it off first and then close it up. So I've got my 3 parts of my first project now. I grabbed some glue from my stash and a little brad for the center of my flower. So my fabric obviously has a wrong side and a right side to it. I'm going to put the right side down, actually, and take a bit of glue. Just using whatever I have on hand. If it wants to come out, let's maybe use the other side. I know you work. Place it where I want it. That looks good to me. Push it down. And same thing with my flower. Again, there's a textured side and a not so textured side. I want this textured side up. There we go. Oopsies. Just going to put it off a little bit. So now I'm going to attach my brad. Had to grab an X-Acto knife because it didn't want to go through. So I'm just going to carefully, watching out for my fingers, poke through my materials. There we go. So there's our first project. We've got our maker all set up, ready to go. We've used our pen, our fine point blade, the fabric rotary cutter, and made a nice little project. Now you're ready to get started on all kinds of other fun projects, playing with vinyl and iron-on, and there's just a world of fun out there. So please, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe. I've got lots of great tutorials coming up in the near future, so you'll be able to check those out. And let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd like to see me go over. Thanks a lot, guys.